for social justice. It's so funny. I'm saying in my head, say the title right, because I said it wrong the last time. But I want to thank y'all for tuning in. And the reason why it's so important to me that y'all tune in and that we get to do this is because we can't create change in our community if we don't fight for change, right? Imagine what we would be at right now if we didn't have our Harriet Tubman, if we didn't have our Malcolm X, if we didn't have our Nelson Mandela, if we didn't have Marcus Garvey. Imagine if we didn't have those people who came before us and pushed and fought. If we didn't have our President Obama, if we didn't have just all these people who just fought on behalf of our community. So now it's our job to pick up that torch and for us to fight for our youth and for the next generation because, man, nothing's going to change unless we change it. So if we want to see better for our kids and for their kids, if we want to see better in our own lifetime, if we want to see our community with more opportunities, if we just want to see a better tomorrow, we got to fight today. So speaking of that, we just held an event right here in Atlanta, Georgia, that I'm really proud of. And we're calling our events the Bridge Builders. And what we do is we have conversations to build bridges inside the Black community. So what that looks like is we have conversations with different leaders of different areas in the Black community. We just had this conversation with law enforcement stakeholders, with educators, with returning citizens, and all kind of different people who are leading in the Black community in their own way. And we talked about what does it look like when it comes to Black people and law enforcement. Why does it feel different for the Black community? Why is it that we're not treated the same way as other communities? And what do we have to do to change that? I mean, at the end of the day, y'all, we want to be safe and we want to be able to live in a community where we don't have to worry about somebody not making it home because they got pulled over at the same time. So we need to be able to have a type of relationship with law enforcement where we're not afraid that our children might get killed in the streets, but we also not afraid of our car getting broken into or our house getting broken into. So what does that look like? What does it look like for us to have safe policing that actually protects and serves, but not to where we're over policed and we feel like criminals just because of color of our skin? So I want to share the event with y'all. We had some powerful, powerful conversations. And I really want y'all to be able to be a part of this. So when you watch this, make sure you leave a comment. Let us know what's on your mind. Tell us your thoughts because we're all a part of the community. So at the end of the day, the only way this works is if we all work. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the event for you and let y'all see it. But I look forward to hearing from you, and I can't wait to hear your responses. All right, y'all.
I've been listening to a lot of the panel, and I agree with a lot of the things the panel is saying, and I have to push back on a few things. First and foremost, the protesters have been doing it. That's the purpose of the protest. So from Ahmaud Arbery all the way to Ray Shard, and let's say their names. We got Ahmaud, we got Brianna, we got, of course, George, we got Rayshard, we got Vincent, we got Jimmy, we got Oscar, we got Veltavius. These are all names that everyone should know. They've been trying to get in touch with our elected officials. And that's the reason for the push to vote, because too long have we allowed elected officials to just count on votes and not be responsive to the accountability that's coming. And so, what I would say, and I agree with Keith 100%. I'm from Southwest Atlanta, born and raised. I went to Thomas Jefferson Guy's, went to Peyton Forest, went to Woodward Academy. My grandmother's house is on Lyndhurst. The rest of my family lives in Southwest Atlanta off Cascade. The last time we saw police roadblocks like that, about 5.5 to 7 years ago. The issue is this: we have rapid gentrification and we have the militarization of the police. And we got to call it out. We got to make sure our city council is held accountable, our mayor is held accountable, our elected officials, the state representatives are held accountable, and they need to understand that the protesters have studied history. They studied Dr. King. They studied Dr. Vivian. They've been in protest with Representative Lewis, and so they know the history. What we have to do is to focus the older generation to understand they are learning in real time. Real time. They are mobilizing the voters, and these elected officials need to understand in the first 100 days of a new administration, we need to address the issue of police brutality. Because respectfully, as the only officer of the court in here, the issue is not the relationship between the community and the police, it's the lack of police accountability. Because police officers have felt for far too long that they can do things that are justifiable. The mayor doesn't hold them accountable, city council doesn't hold them accountable, the district attorney doesn't hold them accountable, and they continue to kill without impunity. And so what we've learned from this protest movement is that when the young folks lead, everybody else listens. Because we've been having this conversation since 2016. Actually, we've been having this conversation since Katherine Johnston in Atlanta, and nothing has changed. So what we have to do is at the next forum, we don't need law enforcement. We need the mayor, we need city council, we need state reps to enforce the Obama 21st Century Police Initiative, which is the solution, with legislation, whether executive order or whether state law. And then at the federal level, for Mr. Biden, who I voted for Kamala Harris, who I voted for, the first issue that needs to be taken up is the issue that the base brought up. After we deal with coronavirus, we got to deal with the virus of 1619, racism and police accountability. And so what I just want to bring to the conversation is this. The young people are out in the streets because they're being killed disproportionately by law enforcement. We need to have a conversation that engages them from 16 to 30, because every night I go on Twitter and I see another young person killed. There was an activist that I marched with in Louisville who was gunned down 2 nights ago, but there's crickets. There's silence. It's time for us to come together and hold police officers accountable. Yes, there are a lot of good police officers. My aunt was a great police officer. My uncle was a great police officer. We're not talking about y'all. We're talking about the ones that y'all go silent about, like the one in Cobb County that killed Vincent Truitt, or the one that killed Jimmy Atchison right over here off of MLK. We have to hold our elected officials accountable, because if we want people to show up for the Senate runoffs the way we showed up for the presidential, they need to have an agreement and a promise from these elected officials that we're going to do for our base, just like this last guy did for his.
So before you leave, I just want to make one comment. Sorry about that. Just something that a lot of people don't know, and this is a direct response to the young people who have been marching. We're on a board that works in conjunction with state representatives, with congressmen, with city officials, directly as a result of the young people. We took 15,000 people multiple times to the state capitol and blocked the front of the state capitol, blocked the front of City Hall, blocked the front of the Fulton County government office, so that you couldn't even get into work until you heard what we had to say. And now we have a board where we meet twice a month. Yeah, so it's the People Uprising, but we work directly with government officials from all different branches. And that wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for our young people doing the things that they did that they got demonized about.
I want to try to say something based on what you said. I mean, the younger people coming together, that's a great thing. Once and for all, we see younger people voting, record numbers, once and for all. And once the younger people realize the power of the dollar, once and for all, then all of this changes completely. Once we recognize that these rappers that are out here rapping filth to our young people, that's tarnishing their mind, their thinking, but they're saying things to them that they hear over and over and over again. The message is so vile, it's a tragedy. So it's a lot of things we have to change. I grew up on the song Earth, Wind, and Fire. You know, you have different things that motivated you. You know, the music was different. The music now is so bad that a child coming up listening to the music is tainting their mind. I had a young lady that's in the car. I said, "You're playing rap music, and you got 2 kids in the back seat that's 5 and 6. She told me to mind my own business. It was bitches, whores, everything you could think of was mentioned to demoralize the black woman. Now, if we don't stop this, because we know that the media dictates a lot of things, kids walking around with their pants hanging off their butt, they thinking that's okay. That is not okay.
Mr. Burke.
We've got to change a lot of these things that's happening. The younger people, it's up to you to step up to the plate and say, once and for all, we're going to stop this that's happening inside of our community.
Mr. Burke, I do agree with you. I do. But something I do want to make sure that I do speak on behalf of the younger people. We can't blame a victim for the behavior of the victim after they've been victimized. The young but we as a community, once we say, I see you out here, I see what's going on, and I refuse to let you go that route. Once we see a young man like Mr. Booker who was getting pulled in the wrong direction, we say, hey, you know what? I'm not gonna let you go that route. Then we can have judgment, or we can have an opinion, or we can have whatever to say, you may not want to listen to this, may not want to do that. But if we're on the outside looking in, we really can't tell them what they need to do. We got to build that relationship and show up first.
I would like to make some comment before we bring this young lady out. Keith has taught me a lot. Being with him and the young people that he serves has taught me a lot. I remember one day we went to visit one of your centers, and there were probably 6 or 7 young people there, and I'm Mother Mary. And I'm thinking that I can come in there being my usual normal self. But what I quickly realized through his expressions as well as his training, on the job training to me, was, well, you don't know why the young man is sleeping. The young man kept going to sleep and I wake him up, and he kept going to sleep and I'd wake him up. And Keith finally said to me, he says, well, let him sleep. You have no idea the condition he's been in the last 24 hours. So I agree. We have to spend time with the young people. We have to help them understand that they are important to us. They're important to our community, and they're important to where we go from here. So the involvement has to be intentional. We've got to spend time in the schools and even in the jails. Sometimes it's just a matter of having an auntie or an uncle or a grandmother feel to come in to represent them, because our children are alone. They're young, their parents are young, and there are no more villages. When we grew up, the village raised us, and we still have that mindset as though there's a neighborhood out there, and there isn't. We are the neighborhood. We are the communities, and we must get involved. So Junction 2800 is available for any conversation. We own it. We can do with it whatever we want. Let's get on the calendar. Let's keep these conversations going.
Hey, my name is Diamond Belgrave. I'm a senior at Georgia State University. I'm a criminal justice major, and I'm also assistant to Keith Strickland with Making the Transition. And I wanted to kind of go back to the question you asked about why we let people come in and kind of just, push us around in a sense. And just taking a different perspective, I feel like we have as a community, I feel like we have like a lack of morale in ourselves, which is partially not our fault because we've been taught these like bad images, for years, for hundreds of years, we've been taught that, these stereotypes about ourselves. And I think that over time we start to believe those things, and some of us even become some of those things. So I think that if we just push one part of it, I think is actually getting our community to believe in themselves and believe that they can be good and that they can make good decisions. And that would come with a lot, it would have to come with, the media, them changing what they put in the media about us, and even like you said, the music, shows, anything in the media that can actually push a good image about us. And I think that actually changing, loving ourselves and changing that, and to stop thinking so bad about our community, that is the first step. And that's all I have to say.
And just to give a little quick background on Miss Belgrave, amazing young lady. I just hired a whole group of college students to come on board with our company. Because of COVID, I knew a lot of them had a lot of opportunities that were taken away. So we really pushed to be able to get them spaces so that they could still get that same experience. And we also know that people of color don't always get the same opportunities for internship and for exposure. So that's something I'm really big on. When I say this young lady pushed and she made sure she got in, she pushed. So our young people, we just got to see them trying. We got to see that they out here fighting and they trying to build a life for themselves. And once we get to a certain position, we got to make a commitment that it's us plus one. You know what I mean? You don't just make it for yourself. It's you and whoever you can carry. I had to go out and do things so that I could put my company in a position to be able to maintain for all of them. But that's why God gave me the company, not for me, for them. We got to hand this over to our next generation, and we got to prepare ourselves for them. So we're going to have to switch panels real quickly, but I wanted to give you a chance to give your answer. But if you could you apologize, but could you keep it brief so that we can move to the next panel?
You have to update the question for me.
Okay, so we were talking about the different treatments once our community becomes more mixed. We were talking about how you used to see roadblocks, and I mean, literally, you would see roadblocks every 2 days over here. It was so, and I'm being honest, I was in the streets at the time. We used to send text messages to each other, let us know where the roadblock gonna be at today. But now that our communities have become mixed, you can't find a roadblock. So I was just saying, why do we, the gatekeepers, the community stakeholders, why do we allow our treatment to be so much different?
Yeah, I just think for me, gentrification is simply white people placing value in what we have devalued. And typically, once we devalue, and I see the same thing happen in the church, whether it be our styles of worship. We're trying to become more like them. Yep. And the more we try to become like them, they're trying to become like us. Yep. We get Botox shots and we cut our lips down. They put shots in their lips to make theirs bigger. Our women try to get smaller and cut everything off. They put bricks in to try to get bigger butts. So whatever we devalue, they value. So I think in a real sense, that's the same thing that's happening with our communities. The less value and less respect that we place in it like we used to. I'm actually right here on Deerfield Apartments, right here on Campbell Road. And what I'm saying is we have to, again, take ownership, take appreciation, and allow ourselves to see ourselves as victims, but take pride in our communities, because what happens is they bring roadblocks in when once we devalue what's ours, and we just can't give it in what's ours, and we might.
I don't know if I was prepared for an answer that deep. That was real. That was real. And I used to live in Deerfield. I used to live in Landrum. I've lived in King Ridge, lived in Chestnut, Regal Heights, Apple Tree, everything up and down Camden Road, right? So if you in Deerfield, we coming over there too. Like Ms. Parker said, we here in the neighborhood. Ms. Brown here in the neighborhood, we all here. So this is a team effort.
I've worked in public safety for almost 20 years. I'm a retired civil and a firefighter. I was that close from getting to watch. Anyway, I've attended community meetings from, like they said, Bankhead to Buckhead.
Yes, sir.
And there's a big difference. I think our problem in this particular area where I live is individual household participation in what's going on. Mm-hmm. At my meetings, I tell my residents, if you hear gunshots, call. Usually Miss Mary look out the window, somebody's shooting, and leave it at that. And I explained to them that the more you call, the police will record this information, and where they see a concentration of this activity, they will pay more attention to it. So you have to report these sort of incidents. So I think we got a lack of that type of participation in calling the police when needed, as opposed to just looking out the window or letting somebody else handle it.
So we're gonna do a 1 minute break so we can change panels. But I just want to follow up on what you were saying while you guys are changing out. I'm on the school board also for the city of Atlanta on the governance committee. It feels really good to be able to be on a governance committee for a school that had to expel me, right? But we had we had a school. The funny thing is, when I got expelled, I wasn't allowed back on the property of any APS school. But now I'm invited back because I'm on the board. So it just goes to show, like when you decide to make a change, for all of us to think about. It doesn't matter if you're on the outside. It doesn't matter what mistakes you made. You bring value because your mistakes can help another person bypass that same mistake. But we had a school where we had children who were getting hit by cars, and we called every day to try to get a stoplight put up. And then we asked some of our multicultural neighbors to call. They put a stoplight up immediately. Yeah, so I just want to say we do have to hold our elected officials accountable, but I want to make sure we go ahead and switch out.
The District 4 is unique because it's entirely inside of the city of Atlanta. But what a lot of people misunderstand is that I'm not the type of commissioner that you see at the city of Atlanta who is a department head hired and appointed by the mayor. I'm a commissioner who has over a dozen Atlanta City Council districts inside of my district. I serve over 175,000 people. My district goes from the Old Fourth Ward in Inman Park, northwest of the Mercedes-Benz Stadium to Fulton Industrial Boulevard, goes up and takes in Grady High School, Atlantic Station, Howell Mill Road, Marietta, Bankhead, Bolton, all of the hood, down to I-20, and then down below I-20, it goes through Collier Heights, Westview, comes all the way down here to Campbellton Road where the Andrew and Walter Young Y is located. And it's important to me to be here because what people don't seem to understand is that Fulton County has a great impact on community with our services and programs. We're mandated by the state to provide free health and human services, and everything that we do stabilizes people and communities. And we should be giving a lot more in those areas. And one of the things that has disheartened me is that I don't see enough of our people involved in county government. And we have allowed there to be a takeover in county government where we have elected officials who they just act like they don't care because they don't see the people there letting them know that we care. And so we have situations where we have millions of dollars of funding that should be going into our communities, going to our nonprofits, going to our small businesses that are not. They're going to areas that really don't need that money, whereas our people are suffering. And we need to be directing those funds in the right direction. So I'm always out in the community pleading and educating and trying to just let people know what resources are available. And Mary Parker is just someone who she's embraced me. I embrace her because she has the heart of gold. And I want to do everything that I can to help her help the community.
Thank you for your service.
My name is Eric Thomas, and I native Atlanta, serve as the senior pastor of St. Peter Missionary Baptist Church, which is about 2.25 miles up just off of Campbellton Road. I also serve as senior advisor to the Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. I also serve as board member of the Metropolitan Atlanta Ministerial Alliance and president of Cascade Youth Organization. And I named all those just to not to highlight what I've done, but just to show to connect to say tonight today the reason why it's important for me to be here, because there's so many different things going on. And it's important to kind of see what others are doing so that we can kind of begin to connect the dots. Just this morning, as I've heard some of the commentators speak, I've come to realize that there's a lot more going on than I thought. And it is important to know that there are other things going on so we can begin to connect the dots and work and support each other. I think Reverend Parker has talked about this for the last couple of years, and I'm so glad to see it come to fruition and manifestation today. And I'm grateful for your commitment to seeing this through. I know it was always an easy task, but you made it seem easy. And so I want to just commend you today and the cross section of people you have brought here. I thought I knew a lot of folk in Atlanta, but with you, like I met Brother Keith a couple of years ago, ran to him again. Others It's just a great opportunity. And I think, like you said, we should continue these conversations and then continue to do the work we do so that we continue to accomplish the goals that are before us.
Thank you.
Well, I think what I heard in everyone's comment is that we are here now and we shall continue to move forward. I'm Mary Parker, and I did not introduce myself when I came up. I was too excited to know who I was at the moment. But I'm the CEO of All-in-One Security Services, and All-in-One is a full service security firm whereby we provide personnel, security systems, integration commercially, traffic control, and many, many other things that we did. We're gonna celebrate our 20-year anniversary. About 2 years ago, I went into what's called a semi-retirement. That wasn't who I was. My job here, the journey was not over. So I began to pick up my foundation, which is a nonprofit. We are 11 years old. We started out dealing with our children, wanting to make a difference and having an impact in the lives of the children whose parents worked for our company at the time. Our first back to school bash was 13 years ago. And we had 37 kids there, most of which were children of our employees. The next year, the number doubled. Well, last year, we hosted over 400 kids that we gave book bags and school supplies. Why is that important to me? It's important because we owe our children. We have a responsibility. To whom much is given, much is also required. Why not start with our children? Brother Brown, you said it as well. So we began raising up another generation through our young people. And today I'm extremely proud to report that we have graduated, either have sponsored scholarships or students who graduated from college, 91. We have 91 students who come through the Mary Parker Foundation, either in college, have graduated. But why is that important? It's because we're raising up another generation. When you say what you're gonna do, you must do it because our young people are watching us. So now that we have this building, the Junction 2800, this is our house. This is where we do what we want to do. And the Mary Parker Foundation lives here, which is we're raising entrepreneurs, educating, and we also have a community involvement initiative. So that is one of the reasons, Pastor, that we were able to bring all these particular groups together, because we know that it's the group, it's when we all come together and we're all speaking the same narrative that's going to make a difference. And it's all about our community, you guys. So thank you.
So I just want to thank you all for everything you're doing and for being here. And I want to jump into our next question. I want to start off with our Zoom panel. I want to ask you, when we look at the systematic oppression and the racism that we faced in the Black community, do you think it's possible for us to have good relationships with law enforcement? And if so, how do we make that happen?
Dr. Brown, that's a great question for you.
That is an excellent question. And I guess here's kind of how I look at it. I think everything moves in phases, that if you're going to make change in society, there's no wholesale instant solution. There's also no long-term set of work that gets you to some magic morning. It's a question of increments and pieces, but never losing sight of what the nature of the problem is, as well as the solution that you're after. So I think it's very, very important that we begin to do the work about holding police accountable. But I think it's also important that we continue to work on the basic economic and political issues that keeps creating the circumstances under which we live. I also think it's very important that we begin to impact the courts and the prisons about how they operate. If you think about it, some of how this works is you can be minding your own business, and the next thing you know, you've got time in prison. As the brother will tell you, once you're in there, other things start to happen to you as well, and you're not in control of what happens. We continue to need to help build small Black businesses, which is part of the hope factor that we have for people. We need to hold our schools accountable as well for how they teach and learn. Are they preparing Black youth for a life as a laborer and a user, i.e. a wage slave? Or are they preparing people for the full slate of possibilities that ought to exist in a free society? So I think we have to work on multiple fronts simultaneously and continue to address that work and hold each other accountable in that process too. Because quite frankly, when each of us achieves a certain modicum of success, the factors that impinge on us begin to shift. When they begin to shift, we begin to change what we hold ourselves accountable to. And that begins part of the separation of us and the people. So just as you have done, Mary, continue to reconnect yourself back to the community of origin and to feel the obligation to impact that community of origin. That's something we have to hold each other accountable to.
So for the people watching at home, I just thought about something. We're very heavily invested in this space. There may be some facts that they don't know that lead to what we're talking about. White males are more likely to be caught with drugs on their person when searched by police, but Black males are almost 3 times more likely to be searched by police officers. There was a national survey done by employers that showed that employers would rather hire an illegal immigrant than a Black male. So there are things like what you were saying about how Black men and Black women were more heavily policed, but we don't get the same type of opportunities. I want to say only 1 in every 14, and I can't remember the exact statistic on this, but I think it's only 1 in every 14 Black teenage males is employed. I believe it's somewhere in there. And when you look at the number of unemployed Black teenagers, what do you think they're doing with their time? If you're living in poverty or if you're living in a low-income community, what do you think that they're trying to do to feed themselves, right? But then when you go back to things like the head right bill that gave white people land and gave them the money to be able to create enterprise on that land when they first moved to America. When you look at what Roosevelt did when he did the Homestead Act and how almost 90% of all of that money went to the white culture, and you look at the white culture became stable and they thrive, not because of just hard work alone, but because of social funding. But you look at how that was kept out of the Black community. Those are some of the things that you're touching on. But when we don't know these facts and we don't know this history, we don't know that other communities had opportunities that we never had.
Also remember, the GI Bill was not available to Black soldiers at the beginning either, at the end of World War II. Social Security was not available to African Americans when it was first put together. The initial set of rules for the Small Business Administration literally prohibited people in certain communities from ever having access to the funds that you need to build a small new business.
Yeah, but I just wanted to mention that as we moved into this, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's very important that we understand that the racism and the systematic oppression is just not only in law enforcement, but it created this whole advantage-disadvantage system, and it created the distrust that still, when you look at why so many white people own the homes they live in, you can directly relate that to Homestead and the redlining. But I'm sorry, go ahead, sir. Okay, who was that, Dr. White? Were you speaking?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Can you continue, please?
Oh yes, I just wanted to say that in terms of building relationships with police as well as within our community, we also have to have that 100% accountability with ourselves as it relates to personal persona, perception, and bearing. And I want to just break that down a bit, is that when I look at the other booker on here, I'm just listening to a small piece of his story, and I talked about everybody having a story. He was able to not see himself as a prisoner. He was able to see himself as a person that was in prison. So he took his wholeness back, and he began to recognize that I'm intelligent, I'm a king, I have value in here. Not only do I have value, he stretched his imagination, but to end up being his imagination became his reality. Right. Just say, I have value not only in prison, I have value outside of the prison. So we need to begin to train our young boys and young girls to, when it comes to the persona, your persona and yourself, how you evaluate yourself and how you look at yourself within the diaspora, the African diaspora, or within the global world. And when we do this, we understand that if I can conceive it, there's no doubt that I can achieve it. Real quick, I'm a person that has 7 degrees. I'm not talking about that, but I'm also the person that didn't go to college straight out of high school. I went to the Marines. And it wasn't until I understood myself through self-evaluation that I could get on the road to success. And so that's all I want to leave with us, is that we need to change our self-perceptions, because we are the kings that we claim to be. And then we need to govern ourselves accordingly through our bearing and how we interact with each other.
Great answer.
That's respect indeed. If I may chime in, I was going to build on the aspect of, accountability for self too, because that's where it begins. That change comes from within as opposed to without. No matter how much, intelligent or emotional appeal we make to a person, if that person don't have it within themselves, they want to change, it's not going to change. And so as it relates to accountability with respect to the police, I have an idea. One of my ideas is that I think that, because they are a profession, they should have professional malpractice insurance, and they need to have a performance bond. They hold high elected officials to have performance bonds, to where if they violate, a person can sue them for their bond. But each individual officer should have a performance bond. So if he do anything outside that's malfeasant or misfeasant, he can be sued on his performance bond. That hit him directly in the pocket. Also, too, I think that we should have individuals like community leaders that's willing to, they may have to sign a release of liability, but they need to be able to be willing to get inside of the patrol cars with these officers during each shift and ride around with them, because this officer ain't gonna do too much if he know this person that's right here beside him is evaluating. Also, we need a quality assurance program with respect to with respect to the police. Quality assurance, people that's disinterested in this officer, that where the person is not too close to conditions, they can hold this officer accountable. And then we'll probably see less misconduct with regard to that. But I would like to give appreciation for those who recognize that, I have made a change, and I have a book coming forth called Breaking the Cycle. Born to Lose but Built to Last. And it's based on me breaking the cycle. Because I was born to lose based on everything I've researched and read. This whole situation has been put into play. We don't find ourselves on the outskirts of prosperity by mistake now. This is by institutional design, but we have the power to make that change as well. So long as we keep these conversations relevant, keep these conversations abound, we can make change, we can make effective change. Look how we just not made a big boy move, and with Stacey Adams, we finna make another big boy move with the Senate that's coming up. So self-responsibility is something that we're gonna have to get instilled in these children. That's why, I really do believe that in order to invest to the future, we have to invest into the minds of the future, which is the youth. I love the children. I love them because, I had a disadvantaged background. But like Keith said, sometimes when we make mistakes, that mistake could be a roadmap for somebody else not to make that mistake later on in life.
Hey, that was a great answer. Sound like you wrote that one. You were ready for that question.
And this is Lee Reed with the Atlanta Citizen Review Board. I agree with everything that the panelists just said. I just want to add one thing. Officer selection. When we talk about the relationship between law enforcement and the community, we really need to focus on who are these people that we're putting on the street. You can put all the training and policies in place, but if the core is not straight, they're going to revert back to their natural inclinations, and that's the problem. You can watch and monitor folks, but when they're not watched and monitored, they're going to be who they are. You have to be critical and thoughtful about the selection process, who we want in the communities, who are going to be doing the policing, and then we start talking about the accountability and and things that the community could do in itself, self-regulation things. But at the end of the day, who are these people on the street making these life and death decisions? And then how do we hold them accountable when mistakes happen or when intentional acts happen? And the last thing I just want to say is, what we see from the protesters, we're getting out of this autopilot. We have to keep the community out of the autopilot to where things just happen to us and we just react to them. Continue to be intentional but with our actions, and we're going to have that change. And it is not wholesale, but it's multifaceted, attacking it from every point.
That was a great point. And I'm going to segue over to Attorney Griggs and let you guys come on down with it.
So I'm listening to everybody's responses, and they are very thoughtful responses, but we have to deal within the current construct of the system that we have right now. And the real issue to police accountability is deconstructing the system of protections that are there for law enforcement, namely qualified and sovereign immunity. Because we can talk about all of these things in a vacuum, or we can get right to the issue. If a city or a county does not feel the financial impact of an officer's conduct, they're not going to change. And so I keep harking back to the 18 cases that the city of Atlanta has right now, that they're fighting with the law department, that they don't want to settle with these families for cases that are clearly unjustifiable shootings. These are things we got to have a conversation with our elected officials about. We got to have elected officials that have the strength to do the right thing, and so, as an attorney, I keep hearkening back to officers of the court know the difference between what's right and what's wrong. But if you're not willing to act upon those duties and you just feed the community fluff, then we have a real issue. And so in the city of Atlanta, I must admit Fulton County has been more progressive in their handling of these issues, but we have a systemic issue that has to be addressed. We have to hold elected officials accountable past the ballot box, past the stump speeches, which is why I am so intentional on the messaging that needs to go to the new administration. In the first 100 days, we need to address the reason for the protest. The reason for the protest were the unlawful killing of Ahmaud Arbery, whose family I am in communication with almost weekly. The reason for the protest was the unlawful killing of Breonna Taylor, who still has not received justice. The unlawful killing of George Floyd, who still has not received justice. The unlawful killing of Rayshard Brooks, who many of us have stopped saying his name, but the Wendy's is not more than 5 miles down the street. So we never stopped protesting. Maybe the media stopped covering it, but the protest never ended. And now we're adding more names. Jacob Blake, Vincent Truitt, the young man who was killed 3 days ago in Louisville, who was a protester. And so we have to be real intentional in our direct ask of our elected officials. If you're gonna say their names and say Black Lives Matter, then you need to couple that with legislation that truly says Black Lives Matter, because the protests have been successful. The protests gave us the hate crime legislation because of Ahmaud. The protest gave us the no doubt legislation because of Breonna Taylor. Hopefully, in the first 100 days of a new administration, the protest will give us the George Floyd policing reform bill, because the laws around policing have not been changed since 1941. I'm gonna say that again. The laws around policing have not been changed since 1941. So we can have all the conversation we want with law enforcement. I respect them immensely. I'm not talking about the good officers. I'm talking about the bad officers who are killing community members in African American and Latino communities and our native indigenous peoples communities, and we are silent to the issues. That's why people are marching down highways. That's why people are shutting down town halls and shutting down city halls and shutting down county halls, because they're tired. And so what we need to do is this. The officers that killed Rayshard Brooks need to be brought to justice. The officers that killed Vincent Truitt need to be brought to justice. The officers that killed Breonna Taylor need to be brought to justice. So before any other elected official goes on any other big network and says anything about police brutality, that individual needs to bring to justice the officer that killed Jimmy Atchison.
Wonderful, wonderful. Our facilitator must have stepped out for a moment, but I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our guests, all of our panelists, our Zoom guests. This was a wonderful first conversation. Each of you are welcome back to join us at any time. The feedback has been enormous, right? Let's give all of these, our panelists, a round of applause. And also our wonderful facilitator, Keith, you did an outstanding job in spite of your health condition. And we're praying that you receive immediate healing. I know you're feeling better, but we want you to be complete and whole. Sure.
So going back to what Derek said, is there a plan in the community to hold the new DA accountable? I'm sorry. Okay. Is there a plan in the community to hold our new DA accountable for the Rayshard Brooks case? Because her fate is going, I believe, this is just my opinion, her fate is going to rely on how she handles this case in this situation. So is there a plan to hold her accountable in regards to the prosecution of the officers with Rayshard Brooks?
Absolutely, there's a plan. And just like with any other elected official, this 100 days is going to be key. She's already having meetings to hire her new staff. And we at the NAACP plan on meeting with her again to reaffirm our belief that not only should the officer continue to be prosecuted in Rayshard Brooks's case, but the other 17 cases that are on her desk need to be appropriately prosecuted. And if she does not move on those situations, the same level of engagement that was with the previous district attorney will be on her desk, will be at her office and other situations. So we have a direct line to the new district attorney. We are hopeful, we are supportive, but we are standing with the community. So there is a plan, and we will continue to act on it as soon as we know which direction she's going to take.
And I just have one more, and I see my big brother is a pastor of the Reverend Thomas, so I hate to even ask this question, but are we doing anything in regards to the decriminalization of marijuana?
Marijuana has been reclassified in the city of Atlanta. I believe it's also been reclassified in Fulton County and the city of South Fulton. So I think that we're gonna have to do something on the state level for the declassification of marijuana. But there are progressive cities and counties that have already done that.
Okay, my name is Janet Brady, and I want to ask the lawyer a question. When we say defund the police, we not only really mean defund the police, we mean like the judges too. There are some prejudiced judges, because I walked in the courtroom May the 21st of 2019, and the first day that my son went on trial was something that he did not do, and that he clearly seen that he still sentenced my son. I think the first day that he was prejudiced. I walked out the courtroom crying because I knew he was not going to be on my son's side.
Yes, and that's why we really need to clarify the term defund the police, because even on this panel, I heard individuals not fully understand what the community is saying. We have to address this criminal justice system because it's not fair to people of color, particularly African Americans. And so when we have the conversation about defund the police, many people don't like the connotation. But we have to rip that back from the right and show them that when you're talking about mass incarceration, when you're talking about unfair jury trials, when you're talking about stop and frisk and all these patterns of militarized policing in our community, that's what defund the police really means. That's what reimagining public safety really means. And when you go into these communities, this is what you hear. So just because you hear a campaign slogan from a super right candidate saying we want to defund the police and that means you won't be safe anymore, many people in our community don't feel safe right now. And so what we need to do is reimagine what community-oriented policing looks like. And that's why I keep pointing back to there's already a blueprint for this. It was after Mike Brown, 2014, President Obama convened a commission. In 2015, they gave a report, which is the Obama 21st Century Policing Initiative, with its 84 recommendations. And even to this day, even though the city of Atlanta signed an executive order, still has not done any real codification of the requirements. But there's still not one jurisdiction that has fully implemented the solution to the problem that we're marching around, that we're talking about defund the police, that we're talking about in police brutality. And we got to have this conversation with our elected officials. It's not enough for you to say Black Lives Matter. You got to codify Black Lives Matter, and just like we codified the Confederacy mattering with these statues.
Hey, Attorney Grants, I want to bring Ms. Hall into this, because when we talk about defunding, you know, we have a commissioner right here. So I want to be able to get your comments on this. And also, Mr. Moore, I want to hear what your comments are.
Well, a couple of things. With the city of Atlanta, they actually do the policing inside of Fulton County. Fulton County only has 7 miles of unincorporated Fulton County that actually is policed by Fulton County Police. And that is the corridor along Fulton Industrial Boulevard. So a lot of people get confused about us actually having some authority as far as policing is done in Atlanta. However, I am really looking forward to our new sheriff, Patrick Labatt, because I've always felt like the sheriff's department needs to provide some type of overlay law enforcement within Atlanta and beyond. And I think that would help us in a lot of areas where we always seem to have a situation where our mayor is in need of police officers and always trying to meet this hiring quota. And I think that we could do a lot more working together. But one of the things that I've noticed is that we've had a situation with personalities. And that is one of the reasons why the county and the city has not worked together. But I'm here to change that. We have to work together, or we will never, ever meet the needs of our community. I want to go back to what was said about hitting the county and the city in their pocket. You definitely don't want to hit the county in the pocket, because the majority of our funding comes from taxpayers' dollars, and those taxpayers' dollars are supposed to be used to provide services and programs to help the community. So if you hit us in the pocket, you're hitting the community in the pocket. What we really need to do is work together to address the issues more. And we need people to exactly hold the elected officials accountable. When a young lady earlier said something about researching your elected officials, the one thing that people don't seem to do much of anymore is contact the clerk who supports that body of elected officials and ask them for the voting record of each elected official and look at how they voted. A very good example is we had our chairman and 3 Republicans got together and decided that our communities no longer needed any HUD entitlement funds. So they voted to stop all the millions of dollars of HUD funds from coming into the county and to remove our entitlement community status altogether. And I had to go on the radio and go out into the community and do a call for action and let our community know you have 4 individuals who just voted to take the funding away from the people in the community. But if our people were more involved, I see hundreds of people show up to the city council meetings, but when you look at the Fulton County Board of Commissioners meetings, you don't see that. But when I did that call to action about the HUD entitlement status, over 200 people showed up and they showed out and they broke a record. Yeah. They broke a record in the history of Fulton County. Fulton County had never seen that many people show up to a Board of Commissioners meeting ever.
Hey, I just want to thank you for tuning in again. But I felt like that was a great place for us to close out because it shows the power that we have as people when we show up, when we use our voice, and when we refuse to let things just be done in our community and to our community without our say so. So I know that we just came out at the highest number ever and voted. It's not enough for us just to vote. We have to stay um, engaged with our political leaders. We have to use our voice. We have to make sure that we are telling them what we need in our community and let them know that if you want our vote for the next election, these are the things you're going to have to do. We got to go to our school board meetings. We got to go to our city council member meetings. We got to go to our commissioner meetings. We have to go to all the different meetings, period, that make an impact and influence the laws, the policies, and the different ordinances that are going to be done, that are going to impact our everyday life. We got to look at what is being given a budget. We have to look at what decisions are being made that are influencing our life inside of our communities, and not just look at it from what's being done in DC, what's being done by our governor. If we don't use our voice, if we don't come together and have these type of conversations like what you just witnessed, if we don't say, okay, who's in control of what department and where is their office, what days do they meet, if we don't get active, nothing is going to change. So please just remember, you have the power to be able to make a change. Like the commissioner just said, they were taking away HUD for a whole county, but they were able to stop that because people showed up. So just imagine how many things can happen if we show up. We can have legislation that creates new policies for our police, for our district attorneys, for our judges, for our sheriffs, for all different areas of law enforcement in our community, but we have to show up. Our email address is info@makingthetransition.org. You can go to our website, makingthetransition.org, and go to our contact page. Let us know what's going on in your city, in your county, in your community, and let's see if we can work together and, just give you any kind of support, guidance, any kind of information so that you can see how did we bring together panels like this, how are we pushing to get things done in our state capitol or in our city hall or in our county building. Because at the end of the day, our communities deserve better. They really do. And it starts with us. We need better representation. We need better leadership. We need better push. And that's how we get a better overall quality of life. Y'all have an amazing evening. I'm so grateful for the people who came together for this event, but also for you, because if you dedicated your time to watch, that means you care. And if you care, that means that you want to make a difference. So like I said, our website is makingthetransition.org. Our email is info@makingthetransition.org. Reach out to us. Let us know what you got going on in your community. I don't know if y'all remember, but I had a family that came on where a young man was killed, shot in the head at a Walmart because he was protecting his girlfriend from being sex trafficked. And we were able to find the murderer because of us using our voice, and we got that young man arrested. So now we broke up a sex trafficking ring and we kept people safer. When we use our voice, it matters. So I need y'all to use your voice. I need y'all to come together. I need y'all to refuse to let the problems stay the same. Y'all have a great evening. I look forward to hearing from you, and I really hope you got something out of tonight's show. If you know somebody making a change in their community, let us know who they are so we can have them on the show. If you want to learn how to make a change in a certain area in your community, let us know what area you want to work on so we can work together to make that happen. Y'all have a great evening. Talk to you soon. Bye.